He going to jail?
Yeah.
He's going back.
The headlines hit fast, but the details were strangely quiet, and that's what made the situation feel even more serious. When word spread that federal agents had raided Pooh Shiesty's mansion, fans expected the usual chaos of leaks and rumors. Instead, there was silence. No immediate statements. No flashy explanations. Just a sudden confirmation that authorities had been inside his home, and they weren't there by accident. A federal raid isn't random. It doesn't happen because of curiosity or coincidence. It means paperwork, approvals, and long-term attention. That's why this moment sent shockwaves through the hip-hop world. Pooh Shiesty is already dealing with enough legal pressure, so the idea that investigators escalated things to this level instantly raised one question. What were they really looking for? Sources close to the situation suggest the operation was precise, not rushed. Agents reportedly spent hours inside the property, moving carefully, documenting everything, and taking items that weren't immediately explained to the public. That alone tells a story. When authorities move that way, it usually means they are building something bigger, not reacting to something small. What makes this even more unsettling is the timing. Just when many believed the worst legal storms were already behind him, this raid reopened conversations people thought were over. Old associations, past decisions, connections that never fully faded. In cases like this, the past doesn't stay buried. It resurfaces at the worst possible moment. Fans are split. Some believe this is another example of overreach, a continuation of scrutiny that follows certain artists no matter what they do. Others think the silence suggests something serious was uncovered, something strong enough to speak louder than any rumor ever could. And when authorities don't rush to clarify, it usually means they don't need to. The mansion itself became symbolic overnight. A place once associated with success, privacy, and escape suddenly turned into a crime scene. That shift is jarring. One day it represents victory, the next it's evidence. And once that line is crossed, there's no undoing the optics. Now the biggest concern isn't just what was found, it's what comes next. Raids are rarely the final chapter. They are often the beginning of a much longer process that unfolds quietly, step by step, long before the public realizes how serious things are. Because when the feds show up unannounced, they're not asking questions anymore. They're collecting answers. Casual visit, and it wasn't about intimidation. Everything about the operation suggested preparation, patience, and intent. Long before anyone outside heard a word, plans had already been signed, reviewed, and approved. By the time the gates opened, the decision had been made that whatever investigators were looking for was important enough to justify crossing that threshold. What stood out immediately was how controlled the situation appeared. No chaos, no spectacle, no rushed exits. This wasn't about sending a message to the public. It was about gathering information. In federal cases, silence often speaks louder than statements. The lack of early details wasn't accidental. It was strategic. When authorities stay quiet, it's usually because what they are working on isn't finished. People close to the situation suggest the focus wasn't random items or surface-level evidence. Agents reportedly moved through the property methodically, room by room, documenting, cataloging, and securing specific materials. That kind of precision only comes from prior knowledge. Investigators don't walk into a mansion hoping to stumble across something. They walk in expecting to find it. This is where the weight of the moment really sets in. A raid like this implies a timeline that stretches backward. Months, sometimes years, of surveillance, information gathering, and quiet coordination. Conversations monitored, financial trails reviewed, connections mapped out. By the time physical space is searched, it's often the final step in confirming what's already suspected. The emotional impact of that reality can't be overstated. For someone already navigating legal pressure, the feeling that the past is still being actively examined creates a different kind of stress. It's not about one incident anymore, it's about patterns, about associations, about decisions made long ago that never fully faded from view. There's also the symbolism of location. A home is supposed to be private. It's where control feels strongest. When that space is entered by authorities, it changes how everything feels afterward. Even if nothing visible is taken, the sense of security is altered permanently. Walls stop feeling like protection and start feeling like reminders. Speculation naturally followed, but the most telling detail was what didn't happen. No immediate charges announced. No dramatic leaks. No official clarification about what was seized. That kind of pause often indicates that what was found needs analysis, context, or corroboration. Federal investigations move slowly for a reason. They're designed to hold up under pressure, not headlines. Another layer people underestimate is how raids affect perception beyond the courtroom. Industry relationships shift. Business partners become cautious. Conversations change tone. Even silence from peers can carry meaning. In high-profile cases, consequences begin long before any verdict is reached. The mansion itself became part of the story. Once a symbol of achievement, it was now associated with scrutiny. That transformation is jarring, not just publicly but psychologically. Success feels fragile when it can be reframed overnight by outside forces. The line between stability and uncertainty suddenly feels thin. What matters now isn't just what was found, but how it fits into a larger picture investigators may already have. Evidence rarely stands alone. It's connected to timelines, communications, and intent. One piece can validate an entire theory, which is why these moments are so critical. For fans watching from the outside, it's easy to focus on shock value. But behind the scenes, this is about process, about patience, about building something step by step. Federal cases don't rely on luck, they rely on certainty. And that's what makes this moment unsettling. Because when agents leave without explanation, it doesn't mean nothing happened. It often means the real story hasn't reached the surface yet. When federal agents step onto a property with authority, the atmosphere changes instantly. This wasn't a casual visit, and it wasn't about intimidation. Everything about the operation suggested preparation, patience, and intent. Long before anyone outside heard a word, plans had already been signed, reviewed, and approved. By the time the gates opened, the decision had been made that whatever investigators were looking for was important enough to justify crossing that threshold. What stood out immediately was how controlled the situation appeared. No chaos, no spectacle. Agents reportedly moved through the property methodically, room by room, documenting, cataloging, and securing specific materials. That kind of precision only comes from prior knowledge. Investigators don't walk into a mansion hoping to stumble across something. They walk in expecting to find it. This is where the weight of the moment really sets in. A raid like this implies a timeline that stretches backward. Months, sometimes years, of surveillance, information gathering, and quiet coordination. Conversations monitored. Financial trails reviewed. Connections mapped out. By the time physical space is searched, it's often the final step in confirming what's already suspected. The emotional impact of that reality can't be overstated. For someone already navigating legal pressure, the feeling that the past is still being actively examined creates a different kind of stress. It's not about one incident anymore, it's about patterns, about associations, about decisions made long ago that never fully faded from view. There's also the symbolism of location. A home is supposed to be private. It's where control feels strongest. When that space is entered by authorities, it changes how everything feels afterward. Even if nothing visible is taken, the sense of security is altered permanently. Walls stop feeling like protection and start feeling like reminders. Speculation naturally followed, but the most telling detail was what didn't happen. No immediate charges announced. No dramatic leaks. No official clarification about what was seized. That kind of pause often indicates that what was found needs analysis, context, or corroboration. Federal investigations move slowly for a reason. They're designed to hold up under pressure, not headlines. Another layer people underestimate is how raids affect perception beyond the courtroom. Industry relationships shift. Business partners become cautious. Conversations change tone. Even silence from peers can carry meaning. In high-profile cases, consequences begin long before any verdict is reached. The mansion itself became part of the story. Once a symbol of achievement, it was now associated with scrutiny. That transformation is jarring, not just publicly but psychologically. Success feels fragile when it can be reframed overnight by outside forces. The line between stability and uncertainty suddenly feels thin. What matters now isn't just what was found, but how it fits into a larger picture investigators may already have. Evidence rarely stands alone. It's connected to timelines, communications, and intent. One piece can validate an entire theory, which is why these moments are so critical. For fans watching from the outside, it's easy to focus on shock value. But behind the scenes, this is about process, about patience, about building something step by step. Federal cases don't rely on luck, they rely on certainty. And that's what makes this moment unsettling. Because when agents leave without explanation, it doesn't mean nothing happened. It often means the real story hasn't reached the surface yet. As the days passed after the raid, the silence only grew heavier. No official updates, no clarifying statements, and no visible attempts to downplay what happened. In situations like this, quiet isn't comfort, it's pressure. Every unanswered question becomes its own source of speculation, and every hour without news makes people wonder what's being reviewed behind closed doors. What many don't realize is that the most important work often begins after agents leave the property. Items taken aren't just stored, they're analyzed, cross-referenced, and placed into a larger framework investigators have already been building. Documents are matched with timelines. Digital materials are examined for patterns. Financial records are compared against known movements and associations. This stage is slow, deliberate, and intentionally invisible. People close to the situation suggest the raid wasn't about a single issue. Instead, it may have been about confirming links between separate threads that had already raised concern. Federal cases often move like puzzles. One piece alone doesn't tell the story, but once enough pieces align, the picture becomes impossible to ignore. The raid may have been the moment those pieces finally came together. There's also the emotional toll of waiting. Uncertainty is often more exhausting than confrontation. Not knowing what authorities think, what they've found, or what they plan next forces the mind into constant anticipation. Every phone call feels heavier. Every piece of mail carries weight. Even routine actions start to feel monitored. This pressure doesn't stay contained. It leaks into relationships, decisions, and daily behavior. People become guarded. Conversations become careful. Trust becomes selective. Even those with nothing to hide feel the strain of being associated with an investigation that hasn't yet revealed its direction. Another overlooked aspect is how timing plays into federal strategy. Investigators don't rush announcements unless they need to. They wait until evidence is solid, narratives are clear, and vulnerabilities are minimized. That patience can feel like a pause to the public, but internally it's often the most active phase of the case. Industry observers note that moments like this can quietly reshape opportunities. Projects stall, deals get delayed, conversations that once flowed freely suddenly require extra caution. Legal uncertainty casts a shadow that affects far more than just courtrooms. There's also the psychological impact of revisiting the past. Investigations rarely focus only on the present. They look backward, searching for patterns and consistency. Decisions once thought resolved resurface. Old connections are reevaluated. History becomes relevant again in ways that can't be predicted or controlled. For fans, the lack of information creates a vacuum filled by rumor. But for those involved, it's a period of intense reflection. Every choice feels magnified. Every possibility feels real. The future becomes harder to visualize when the present is suspended in uncertainty. What makes this phase especially difficult is the absence of closure. There's no endpoint in sight, no clear resolution to prepare for, just the knowledge that something significant is being examined, and the outcome will arrive on its own timeline. This is often where federal cases are won or lost, not in dramatic arrests, but in quiet rooms where evidence is weighed and decisions are finalized. And until that process reaches its conclusion, everything else remains on hold. The raid may be over, but its impact is only beginning to unfold. By the time the investigation moved into its next phase, the stakes had shifted entirely. The initial shock of the raid had passed, but the questions it raised were multiplying. People close to the situation explained that what made this kind of scrutiny so serious isn't just the seizure of items, it's the ripple effect that follows. Every detail taken, every note documented, and every record reviewed and verifying details before any charges are even considered. This slow, deliberate pace can be exhausting for those under scrutiny. Every call, every interaction, every document becomes a potential point of concern, creating constant pressure and a heightened awareness of risk. Friends and associates reported that Pooh Shiesty's daily life became a careful balancing act. Even routine activities, checking emails, meeting with business partners, or speaking with family, required heightened attention. Privacy, which once came naturally, now felt fragile. Every action carried the possibility of misinterpretation or unintended consequences. In high-profile cases, the mental burden of simply existing can be as significant as the legal implications themselves. Meanwhile, the outside world continued to speculate. Social media exploded with theories, rumors, and half-truths, while entertainment outlets debated what could or couldn't be true. But the real story, insiders suggest, was far quieter. Federal investigations prioritize accuracy over spectacle. They focus on facts, timelines, and connections, rather than headlines. This creates a dichotomy. The public sees drama, but the reality is a painstaking, methodical process unfolding behind the scenes. Sources also noted the importance of strategy during this phase. Federal investigations are rarely impulsive. Every step, from the raid to the review of seized materials, is calculated. Investigators look at context, patterns, and potential vulnerabilities. The items removed from the property weren't random. They were selected to provide insight, corroborate prior information, and clarify relationships. In complex cases, one document or record can confirm suspicions that have been under scrutiny for months, making precision more critical than speed. Another layer to consider is the influence of perception. The mere act of a federal raid changes how people interact with the subject. Business partners may hesitate. Contracts might be delayed. Even casual acquaintances can become more guarded. This indirect pressure compounds the stress of the investigation itself. Surviving the process isn't just about legal defense. It's about navigating a new landscape of cautious interactions and altered expectations. Krizian's commentary highlighted another aspect often overlooked: the human element. Regardless of fame or wealth, facing federal scrutiny is isolating. The uncertainty, the lack of immediate answers, and the ever-present anticipation can create psychological strain. Friends and family may offer support, but the core experience remains solitary. Understanding that isolation is critical to grasping the full impact of what's happening. Financial implications also come into play. Delayed deals, halted projects, and a pause in public-facing activities can compound stress. The pressure of maintaining income, relationships, and influence while under investigation forces individuals to adapt quickly. Decisions that once seemed straightforward now carry layers of risk, and every action is measured against possible interpretations by authorities. By this stage, it becomes clear that the raid itself is only the beginning. What unfolds next? The review of materials, the corroboration of information, and the determination of intent has a potential to shape not only immediate legal outcomes but also long-term public perception. In the world of high-profile figures, this stage can be just as consequential as any courtroom appearance. In essence, the real story isn't just the items taken or the raid itself. It's the environment of scrutiny, the relentless pressure, and the mental recalibration required to navigate an invisible battlefield. The public sees flashes and headlines, but the work happening behind the scenes is meticulous, deliberate, and consequential, a reminder that in federal investigations, patience and precision often outweigh spectacle and speed. As the investigation advanced, the pressure intensified in ways that weren't immediately visible. The initial raid had been loud in implication but silent in explanation, and that silence carried its own weight. For someone in the public eye like Pooh Shiesty, Every hour without clarification felt like a spotlight on uncertainty. Friends, collaborators, and even casual associates began to measure their interactions carefully, knowing that any connection, however minor, could be scrutinized later. The walls of the mansion had been crossed once, and in the public imagination, that breach extended far beyond the property itself. Inside Shiesty's circle, conversations became guarded. Even the most innocuous topics were filtered before being shared. In high-profile cases, the ripple effects of a federal investigation extend beyond the legal realm. They alter behavior, communication, and trust. People who once spoke freely now hesitated. Those who were loyal became cautious. The uncertainty didn't just hang in the air. It changed the way everyone around him navigated daily life. Meanwhile, investigators moved methodically behind the scenes. Every item collected was scrutinized, every document cross-referenced. What seemed mundane to outsiders, a phone, a ledger, or digital files, could provide crucial context in understanding patterns, relationships, or prior activity. In federal cases, no detail is too small. One overlooked note, the anticipation, the uncertainty, and the constant mental evaluation is internal. The need to stay cautious at every moment creates a unique type of loneliness. Every decision is weighted not just by immediate consequences, but by the potential interpretations of investigators or the public. Financial implications continue to mount. Deals that once seemed routine may stall. Projects may be paused or cancelled. Partnerships that relied on trust or immediacy are affected by hesitation. For someone in the entertainment industry, the inability to act freely can ripple into long-term career impacts. It's not just about the legal implications of the raid. It's about how the world adjusts in response to uncertainty and how that uncertainty changes the way people conduct themselves. Finally, this phase emphasizes endurance over reaction. The raid was the loud beginning, but the days, weeks, and months that follow are about persistence, patience, and mental fortitude. Each day carries subtle tests of composure, awareness, and strategic thought. The difference between moving forward successfully and making a misstep often lies not in bold action, but in controlled restraint. By the end of this stage, the environment has shifted completely. What once felt normal, privacy, autonomy, and casual trust, has been replaced by calculation, vigilance, and adaptation. The real story isn't just about what authorities found. It's about how a person navigates the consequences, both visible and invisible, and how survival in that environment reshapes behavior, relationships, and perspective long after the raid ends. The days following the raid marked a turning point. While the initial shock had faded, the reality of scrutiny settled in, heavier and more constant than before. Every decision, every conversation, and every movement carried potential weight. Those closest to Pooh Shiesty noticed a change in how he approached life. Cautious, measured, and meticulously aware of both what he said and what he didn't. The psychological impact of knowing authorities had combed through his home lingered in ways that couldn't be erased by time or explanation. This stage was about navigation. Federal investigations are as much about observation as they are about evidence. The presence of agents inside the mansion was only the first act. The true pressure came afterward, when all seized items were analyzed, compared, and contextualized. Each document, digital file, or personal item could reveal patterns investigators had been tracking for months, connecting dots that outsiders could not even imagine. That knowledge, even without explicit confirmation, changes how someone operates, forcing them to calculate each interaction and reconsider every prior choice. Friends and associates noted that the focus shifted from mere survival to strategic management. Communications became filtered, public interactions calculated, and business decisions approached with a level of caution previously unnecessary. Where spontaneity once ruled, restraint became the rule of thumb. Trust was no longer automatic. Every person's motives were analyzed, every conversation weighed for potential consequences. Even casual social interactions felt layered with risk, because the perception of behavior mattered as